I was living in Northern California in a small town called Arcata, going to college there at Humboldt State University. I was 20 years old, and I was in a place that was within myself that was incredibly depressed. I really didn't want to be on the planet anymore, and it was a depression that was I would say beyond thought and feeling. It was a whole body experience that I had been experiencing for several months. And I had an ongoing conversation with God or the divine. And I was basically saying that I don't want to be here anymore. Please take me. And I didn't I didn't even think about suicide. I didn't even consider that an option. When I thought about it, really, it seemed like it would hurt, and that's not the way I wanted to go. So my request was, please just take me. And it was 4 days prior to my accident that I was reaching out and saying, I'm not happy anymore. I can't stand this sadness. I can't stand this depression. Please take me. So to go back to your question, Jeff, the day of the accident itself, I was in the redwood forest. There's a community forest of redwood trees behind the college. And I had gone there, 2 or 3 times a week because I loved the trees so much. And it was my place of refuge, basically. So that day was no different than any other day. It was morning time. I was cycling through the trails that I was very familiar with, and maybe a few hours. And then there's a trail that goes downhill that works its way back towards the school and the town where I lived. And as I was going down the hill, I took a few jumps, and then I took a jump that I was familiar with, but on that day it actually wasn't. I was not familiar, or I hit the jump, and it was basically built up vertically. Someone had built it up within maybe just a few days of since the last time that I was on the trail. And it was quite terrifying. As soon as I hit the jump, I just knew that I was dead, because there's no way I could have survived that jump. I wasn't wearing a helmet. I never wore a helmet. I didn't think they were cool. I didn't think I was doing anything extreme to be able to need a helmet. But that day I probably could have used one. So I came down on my front tire, and then it was just kind of a roll effect. It was my front tire, it was my head, my neck, and my body flipped over onto my back. And I lost my breath instantly, and I lost my awareness, my earthly awareness, my consciousness at that point. The next thing I remembered was I was floating above the trees. Now, the redwoods have a long trunk, big trunk, and then at the top there's this crown of needles, and they're incredible. Science says that they have their own ecosystem. But it wasn't like an astral body experience where you take your body with you. My experience was just like an awareness of who I was, very conscious of, very familiar with who I was, and very different than the depression that I was feeling in my body for so long. It was kind of like eyes looking out and experiencing the great wonderment. And I felt this amazing peace moving through me. There was just no thought. It was complete silence. And at the same time, I felt very connected to everything around me. Colors were different. I could see the detail of the trees, almost like a microscopic vision of the dew from the morning fog on the trees. My senses were very heightened. I could hear the ocean, which was 5 to 10 miles away. I could hear birds maybe 20 miles away. I don't even know if there's any distance, but I knew that they were far away. And I looked down. I remember looking down at my body and seeing my body there, curled up on the ground, and knowing that that was my body, but it wasn't really me. Like I felt more me hanging out in the trees than I did who I knew myself to be previously. It took me a moment. I don't know. Time is very fluid, so I can't tell you if it was 5 minutes. I can't tell you if it was 20 minutes. But I took a moment, and then I came back to the sensations that I was feeling, and I kind of marveled in that. And then it was like this question came. It wasn't like a voice or anything like that. It was just kind of this question came into my awareness. Do you want to go further? Like, do you want to explore further, or do you want to go back? And my instant reaction was, I don't want to die. And as soon as I said that, I was back in my body. I had later on I had wondered, like, why did I say that? I guess we can get into that, but my experience at that moment was extreme pain moving throughout my whole body. I can't even explain it. It was like stabbing and electrical, and I couldn't move. And I took a breath. I had trouble breathing at that moment. I was kind of had a rapid heart rate. I opened my eyes. They were a little fuzzy. And then I began to kind of have this surreal experience where I saw fairies coming down out of the trees and coming towards me and dive bombing me and giggling and moving around me. And it was, I was experiencing the pain at the same time, but my focus was momentarily taken off that pain as I was seeing this. I also began to hear this beautiful humming, ringing noise. And the best way I can explain it is like a Tibetan singing bowl, but not real loud, just kind of a. And I knew that it was the trees. And I felt this incredible energy coming from them. It's like they were communicating to me, healing me. And I actually didn't know until later on what was actually happening until I read some books called The Ringing Cedars of Anastasia of Siberia, the Ringing Cedar series. But at the time I knew that they were the trees. The fairies kept floating around me. And then I remembered that I had to breathe. And as I was remembering that I had to breathe, I was brought back to that pain and in my body. And then I was basically out again. The next thing I remembered, I was in the hospital. I was laying in bed. I heard a voice that was trying to wake me up. It was the doctor. And he was saying, "You're very lucky. You didn't break any bones." He was repeating it over and over again, just to kind of get me back into my body and aware of my surroundings. And he was following the protocol, asking me questions. He was asking me, "What's your name? Where do you live? Are you a man or a woman? What's your phone number? Do you know anybody in town?" All these things I didn't know. I would just, no. I didn't know any of them. He says, "Do you know anybody in town or any phone number?" And I blurted out a family friend's phone number. Just came out of my mouth. And they actually ended up getting me that day. So I hadn't broken anything, but I did have neurological damage in my body. I had a slip disc, my C7 disc. I had a severe concussion. That neuromuscular pain was what made it hard to walk around, and to function. And then my head trauma made it hard for me to remember. And that's when it took a while for my memory to come back. I think by the next day or two, I remembered my name. My experience was slowly coming back to me. I had an experience when I was laying on the couch at my friend's house, or my family friends, where I could really sense and feel my family. Like my mom and my dad and my sister, they were all worried about me, and I could actually feel that, like, to my core. And I could feel the sadness. And that was kind of the beginning of becoming more empathetic or empathic, I believe. But I had always been empathic since I was a really little kid. I was very connected to nature, and I could, I communicated with the trees, and the wind was my friend. And then as I got older, I began to just kind of stuff that away. It was too much for me, the emotions that I was feeling. And I think right before my NDE, or the months leading up to that, that's what actually brought in that depression, because I was neglecting for so long feeling all of these feelings. But the funny thing is, well, it's not really funny, but it kind of is, looking back at it, is everything that I was suppressing after my ND came up, like, all at once. All the fear I've ever had, all the depression I ever had, all of the emotions that had been blocked were brought up, and it became very uncomfortable. It was as if my body was experiencing this pain, but it was also very emotional. But my true, I guess my true goal at that point was just to feel better, my body. I had made that decision to come back, and I just wanted to heal my body. And I know that I didn't want to do it in a traditional Western sense. So I sought out energy healers that I had trusted, that I felt had worked with me in the past. Also, network chiropractic. There was a man named John Stiles who was very, very gifted, and he worked with my spine and my injuries. And I would say that after about between 6 and 9 months, he had assisted in my healing, and all of that pain had disappeared.